What's up, rockers? Welcome to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast, where we geek out on all things rock and roll. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Leave us your likes and comments. You can also leave likes and comments on our Facebook page. Follow us on iTunes, Spotify, Instagram at talklouder_podcast. And of course, our website, talklouderpodcast.com. I'm Metal Dave Glessner, along with my co-host, Jason McMaster. And today we are joined by a longtime friend of Jason's and a guy who I've had the pleasure of hanging out with on numerous occasions, riding Jason's coattails. That is John Bush. We know him from Armored Saint and Anthrax, one of the best metal voices ever. And we're honored to have him today. We've been trying to get him on the show for some time. He's a busy man, but he made time for us today. He was actually in Dallas at a hockey tournament for his son. Mm-hmm. His son plays hockey at some level. So we got some time with him while he was in Dallas. And man, it was great hanging out with him again, picking his brain a little bit.
Yeah, it's good to hear him have a perspective and where his head is after all these years, and probably answered all of the questions that we had for him 1,000 times. So, but, you know, still catching him in a new light on some of that material as well, with giving us fresh fodder, if you will. The importance that John has had to me as a fan and as a singer is how much fanfare he has just from people who are not musicians, who are just true hardcore fans of his voice, whether it be with Armored Saint or Anthrax or whatever it is that he's done, is true. It's all true. The fact that he talks about how his voice has changed, you know, from when he was young to where he is now as a vocalist. That's legit, and now he's had to be creative. Singers have to be creative when they've been singing for 45 and 50 years. You know, they have to be creative with their voice because it's changing all the time. Not just puberty. You know, it's changing all the time, just because of your age.
Yeah.
And you know, when you're 58, 59 years old and you're still singing songs you wrote when you were 20. Yeah, that's something, because, you know, you want to, when you're young and dumb, you go crazy on the microphone. And when there's something a little bit different about a 60-year-old singing something than a 20-year-old singing.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful about, you know, by that much of tenor as a singer, you know what is going to work and what's not going to work. So you're still hitting all the same notes, but they sound different.
Yeah.
So that's knowledge and experience.
And his voice is currently getting plenty of exercise. He's out with Armored Saint on tour with WASP.
Yeah.
And of course, that pairing has some history that we talk about with John today, going way back to the early 80s. I know you've had some history with him. I've seen you perform on stage with John Bush.
Yeah, with Armored Saint and Anthrax, and it's been just a joy to be in the room and get this look.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it was like not pre-planned. You know, and there was a few times where he'd be like, hey, I'm bringing you up tonight, or you're going to do March of the Saint, or hey, you're going to do Madhouse, or whatever. I'm like, what? Oh, shit. How'd those words go again? You know, you're like, what? It's like, I'm off tonight. I'm not, what? You're going to do, you know? So anyway, those moments I'll cherish forever. And I mean, is he inviting someone on stage every night of the tour? Is there just somebody he knows hey, you come up here and sing, you know?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Probably not.
So
I know he holds you
makes it even more special, doesn't it?
I know he holds you in high regard, and
he's always been so real and sweet, and he tells the fucking truth.
Yeah.
Bless that.
And people should know that Armored Saint has put out like 3 records in the past few years. It's picked up right where they kind of left off back in the day. If you stop paying attention, they've got the last 3 albums are called La Raza, Win Hands Down, and the latest one is called Punching the Sky. So John's voice is still in fine form all these years later. And it was great to have him on the show today. We appreciate him taking time. John Bush on the Talk Louder podcast. Oh, wow.
So for the longest time, I thought those songs were, I thought the names were wrong. Like I thought the song Four Sticks was Misty Mountain Hop. And I mean, I knew what Stairway to Heaven was.
Right.
But, but some of the other like deeper tracks I thought were different names because the names were wrong on it.
Yeah.
That's a collector's item if you still have it.
I do not. Yeah, I do not have that.
You're not a hoarder like Dave and I, obviously.
Apparently not. But
No.
I don't have a bunch of my old original records or cassettes. I started collecting again, but yeah, it's a drag. I think I never took care of them, kind of like baseball cards, you know, and not really knowing that some of that stuff would probably be worth something one day.
Oh,
Yeah. I could kick myself for getting rid of all those KISS cards that I used to have. I had enough to create the two of the posters that were on, you know, you could put the pieces together and make a poster. And I had enough of them to make two of the posters, and I don't know whatever happened to them.
KISS dolls, the original Planet of the Apes dolls, all the G.I. Joes and shit that I just, I'm 17, I'm throwing this in the garbage. All that shit would be worth, buy a car.
Yeah, totally. It was funny. Joey had a G.I. Joe with the real hair, and he shaved it. He shaved his G.I. Joe. It's like, dude, he's not growing it back. But that was pretty weird that he was like, I'm going to shave him. I don't know why.
Well, he was just practicing for the future.
I guess, you know.
Yeah.
So let's just, I mean, we just have a conversation, man. We just hang out. We all kind of know each other. There's not really any, I wanted to like play a game real quick.
Oh, shoot.
Today, our guest on the Talk Louder podcast is the one and only John Bush. I am going to, let the crowd cheer, Jason. And I was going to throw my co-host not under the bus, but I was going to throw him a couple of questions and check his knowledge of what we're about to get into here.
Oh, boy.
Metal Dave, please name an Armored Saint song that maybe they did not write. That's hint number one. That has the word Saturday in it. Go.
Saturday Night Special off the Raising Fear album.
Ding, 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 ding.
You know, so
Win on. That's good.
he just was like, come on, give me something.
He's like, give me something hard. Okay.
That was like a volleyball spike
All
back.
right. What is sticking with cover songs, because cover songs are fun. Hey, Metal Dave, what
I'm going to quit while I'm ahead.
Judas Priest song, if there was more than one, you school me, but I believe there might have only been one Judas Priest song did Armored Saint cover. Go.
Now you got him stumped.
Yeah, now you got
ouch. Oh,
Is it on an album?
Feeling the Pain. Technically, nod to the old school. Technically, yeah.
He's gonna Google it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to Google it.
Never Satisfied.
Okay.
Yeah, that was cool. That was
right.
Really
it's an
cool.
unusual Priest song. It's for that matter.
Yeah, it's weird for them.
Yeah, I don't even think Rob wrote that song. Actually, I think it was KK and some other guy.
Well, if you think about it, it's almost like old Sabbath.
Yeah.
It's kind of a sway.
It's really heavy and breaking move. I love that song.
It's kind of plodding. Yeah, you guys killed that. And was that on, since we have you here, was that on like a real release, or was it on that collection called Nod to the Old School exclusively?
Yeah, it was only on Nod to the Old School. Oh, okay. Well, actually, that's not true. I stand corrected. I'm sorry. There was a Judas Priest tribute record that came out like somewhere in South America or Latin America, and it was on that originally.
Okay.
And I don't even remember what record that it was on. I'm sorry to say, but it originally was on a Judas Priest tribute record in South America, and then we said, "Hey, can we re-release it on Nod to the Old School?"
Right. I've never seen that anywhere else. So, Thank you for clearing that up.
I stumped myself because I don't even remember what original record it was on, which is pretty sad. Some people are, the guys who probably put it on, they'd be like having a sad face right now. Like, dude, even know?
Yeah, they're going to watch this show, all three of them. And the three people that watch this show are going to be like, what's he talking about?
Speaking of Raising Fear, it's hanging on my wall, autographed by you kind gentlemen.
Of course it is.
It's out of shot right now, but I've got across the ceiling in this room is nothing but framed autographed albums, and Raising Fear is one of them. And you're up there with some good company. There's Alice Cooper, Motorhead, Judas Priest, Dio. So yeah, Raising Fear. I wanted to ask you, since we're on the subject of Raising Fear, since Jason kind of indirectly brought it into the conversation, I was going to get to that, but I wanted to ask you, John, out of all the albums you've recorded, what would you say is your proudest moment as a vocalist? Because I feel like Raising Fear might be your best, but I want to hear it from you.
That's funny, because Raising Fear, at that time, I ended up singing the highest I ever did. I don't really know exactly why, other than I'm trying to kind of remember that at the time, I think, it was the mid 80s, 87, while we were recording in 86. Obviously metal, it was in the middle of that decade, and the way people were singing were a certain style. I think we were listening to a lot of Accept and, various bands that had high singers, maybe even, Queensryche. Of course there's the obvious choices, but, and I think Dave Pritchard was trying to push me to sing higher. And really, I think a lot of that stuff's out of my range. It certainly is now as I've gotten older and my voice has gotten deeper. So it's hard. I have to kind of make some, adjustments to singing some of those songs live. I think they sound good with my voice as it sounds now, singing them live. But like I listen back and like the song Legacy, I don't think I could even do it. I don't think even if we tried, I don't know if I could sing it. We'd have to probably change the tuning on it. So it's pretty up there. And sometimes I make the joke that I sound like I had some hits of helium before I did some vocal takes. So, but people like that record, I'll never ever like say, the vocals. I think that they were just a certain way. And, as time went on, as my voice got deeper, really in the 90s, probably more with Anthrax when my voice changed a little bit. I finally got out of puberty, and then it kind of got into this mid-range where I'm like kind of happy now. I don't know. I mean, I'm just happy that I'm actually still able to sing at this age, 59 years old now, and still sound pretty strong considering, and we'll be tested here in this next upcoming tour we're doing soon, 6-week run, which we probably haven't done one of those in years. So hopefully, knock on wood, I'll stay healthy and sound good every night. And sometimes I have a tendency to over sing. That's one of my kind of flaws, is that I'll just push too hard, just probably caught up in the moment, and then then you get hoarse. But the key component, of course, and Jason as a singer knows probably all about this, is that is really just hearing yourself. That was because for years, I think I always make the joke that probably 70 to 80% of all rehearsals and shows I played, the monitors sucked. And I mean, I'm not even joking. So like when you can't hear yourself or you're struggling to hear yourself, it's just not fun. It wouldn't be.
I could talk to you an hour about that subject.
Yeah. So, I mean, now with in-ears, there was an adjustment to make and a learning curve with having in-ears, but I would never go back because if nothing else, I could hear myself all the time.
Let me ask you just straight up, because I just got my first set yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I remember, and off and on when I can, when it's convenient, I usually bring my own monitor pack, but we're talking 4 wedges and amps, keep it in the bay of the bus and all,
That's nice.
But you can't always do that. Fly date, you can't do, usually fly dates, it's festival rigs. Usually the monitors are top notch and they know what they're doing, but man, sometimes you show up to the venue, it's like, oh, this is a cool venue. Where's the monitors?
Right. exactly.
I mean, literally, where the fuck are they?
Right, exactly. Where are they? Right.
I'm concerned because I love to like feel the stage shake just at going check 1 2 and my feet go
right. No, that's a legitimate concern, and I felt that way, and I still to some degree do, because everything is kind of insular, if that's the right word. It's all here now. Contrary, and one thing you don't get is the the sound of the audience response, and that's really important to a front man, of course. And people go, oh, you can put mics in the crowd. It's like, what, at some dumpy club, you're going to put mics in the crowd? No, you're not. That's not. You barely have monitors. How are you going to put mics in the crowd? Like, that's not happening. So, I do sometimes take it out on certain parts just so I could hear the crowd and the ambience of the audience. But it's just more for the security of knowing that I can hear myself and then I won't oversing. And, bands are loud on stage, and then you're battling with that, and the monitors aren't good. And if they're good, great. If they're not, they suck. And then, so I would recommend it for just about any musician, because then you're consistently hearing yourself all the time. And for singers, it will preserve your voice, I think. But yes, it's a legitimate concern that you have, Jason, and there will be a learning curve to adapt to. So prepare for that.
Yeah. So in your discography, I'm going to put you on the spot because you didn't answer my question.
Okay, so let me answer. I didn't. I'm sorry. I have a tendency to come
I want to know.
I think that maybe the last record I did, I think my vocals are the best because, of course I'm partial to what we just did, but recently, Punching the Sky and Win Hands Down, like, I think I sound so strong and it sounds like warm and good. So I think that, for me, that's the best because it's current and it's also me of now and still being able to do it. Like, people say, John Bush, you sound the same. And even though it's very flattering to me, the reality is I really don't think I do sound the same. I think I sound very different than I used to sound. But hey, I'm lucky enough to be able to still pull it off. And that's what I'm happy about.
Yeah. Well, for my money, you're one of the best vocalists in all of hard rock and heavy metal, and have been for ever since you broke onto the scene. I was going to ask you also, because I think a lot of people share that sentiment with me. I don't think I'm alone in that regard.
I'm biting my tongue over here.
Yeah. So, are there any vocalists out there that you feel, John, are underrated and don't get the recognition that they deserve? Since your name comes up all the time as being one of those guys, I think. Do you think there's anyone else out there that you recognize as being a really strong vocalist that maybe doesn't get the recognition they deserve?
That's a good question, because the obvious choices of ones that are just amazing and do get the recognition are the Halfords and the Dios and the Bruce Dickinsons and in the metal world and Jeff Tates and you name it. So, and the Jason McMasters.
Hey.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably underrated. Jason's probably underrated in that world. I mean,
checks in the mail, John.
Hey, I mean, it was funny. I just was lucky enough to do the Rock in Rio show with the guys in Metal Legions recently, and that was a really off the charts show and festival and big crowd, and that was Maiden, and I hadn't seen them in a while, and we actually stood, like, we were able to go like right in the crowd, like in the very front, to watch them in front of like 80,000 people in Rio. And I just it just reaffirmed to me how incredible Bruce Dickinson is. And not just as a singer, but his frontman energy. The guy was all over the stage and everyone knows this, but I was just like, man, I wanted to bow down to Dickinson again and go, dude, it was so inspiring to me of just what he's capable of doing. And, he does all these amazing things like fences and flies planes and, he's just this incredible person, but, he had cancer and he had, I think if I'm not mistaken, he had like in a throat or tongue or something like, and he's a singer, right? So, the fact that he's just out there with the energy that he has and the power and the conviction and the front man, capabilities that he just is so amazing with. It was just really cool. He really inspired me. So, but he's one of those top guys in there. There's a lot of guys. Todd from Queensryche, who's in the band now. He's an amazing frontman and singer. That guy is incredible.
Don't get me started.
Yeah, he's incredible. So like, there's so many of them out there.
We had him on. We had Todd on this show. We talked like 3 fucking hours.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, he likes to speak and he has a lot to say. But,
he's awesome, man. He's a good dude.
Yeah,
I know you guys
great.
toured together. How was that?
It was awesome. You know, he's a great person, and you know, it was a fun little run that we did, and you know, the Queensryche guys are awesome, and they just have those tunes. They can just play some legendary songs, and Best I Can to Queen of the Reich to newer stuff that it's very convincing when they play them live. It's just they're amazing songs and
timeless.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's real fun, and we might actually do some more touring with them next summer in Europe, which would be amazing. So awesome. I'd be happy about that. Wow. Chuck Billy's a great frontman and an awesome singer, and we just I did the stuff with him for Metal Legions, and that was cool. And actually, Luller was the band that actually played on the bill after us. And
I'm sorry, who was it?
Living Color.
Living Color. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. And Corey Glover is just so amazing. What an incredible singer he is. So, I was really inspired to listen to him sing.
Yeah.
Mike Patton is always going to be one of those guys that I think is, I don't think he's underrated, of course, because people really respect him, but he's up there. And, Chris Cornell, as far as being some of my favorite singers that weren't from the 70s and 80s. Those guys were some of the best rock singers of all time.
Yeah. I got to ask you, because I grew up in San Antonio, and the first time the first time I ever saw Armored Saint, you were opening for Metallica on the Ride the Lightning tour, and
That's when I met Jason.
Okay, so yeah, and the thing is, in San Antonio, you ended up doing 3 nights because the demand.
Cameo Theater.
Yes, Cameo Theater. And to this day, people still talk about that 3-night stand, because if you were there, you wear it like a badge of honor. And I was there. Jason was there. What do you remember about that tour going back? That was like 84, 85?
It was the winter of 85. Well, it was the WASP Metallica on Armored Saint.
Right.
February of 85. The Austin show was February 21st, which is the day that you and I met.
We met in Austin, yeah.
Yeah.
It was an amazing tour because, Metallica was just on the thresholds of exploding at that point. And WASP was great. It was our first album, and our first album, March the Saint. And WASP and Metallica were kind of, at one point, I think Metallica went on, I can't remember now, but one of them went on first, and then the other band followed. But I don't think anybody wanted to follow Metallica at that point. Ever really, right? Yeah. In the history of the band, I don't think you really want to go on after them. So it was a little hard when they changed that, and Metallica went on before Wasp. But I think they did great, and now we're touring with Wasp again, which is going to be so cool. But it was just a great tour altogether. Like, people still talk about that full tour. Now, by the time we got to Texas, I think that's when Wasp left the tour. And I don't remember why they did, actually, to be honest, because I think it was supposed to be the whole nation. But like the Texas into the West Coast and even up to the Pacific Northwest, they didn't play those shows. And I don't remember why. But overall, that tour was just a lot of fun. It was, a lot of people still talk about it. In particular, the shows from L'Amour's, because we played 3 nights at the L'Amour's in New York and Brooklyn. And those were really amazing shows, too. So, I don't know. How big was the Cameo Theater? Because it was crazy. We played 3 nights there.
It's about, because I cut my teeth in that place. Probably 800.
Is that big?
Yeah. Wow. I mean,
I was going to say
sold out.
5 to 800.
That's sold out. I mean, that's like slammed,
Is it still there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, people still have shows there.
They don't host. They don't do metal shows that I'm aware of.
I think that it's more of like a event center type.
It's more like a true theater, I guess, now, more than a concert venue.
Yeah.
But it was like a flat floor, right? Was it? And then was there a balcony?
No.
No.
No,
Okay.
it's a sloped floor
Oh, okay.
from the front down to the stage, and then
Okay.
I don't know the stage setup any longer, but just a few years later I saw Guns N' Roses there, and they still had I'm sure that when you at that show, the shows we're talking about with Metallica, it had the set of stairs that around the rounded front stage, so there was stairs going up,
Right.
and I don't even think that there was a true barricade. I think if you were like in the front row, you were leaning on those.
Stage.
You were like down on your knees on that little stairwell right there. Kind of
That's funny.
strange. Kind of strange.
Right. I
And then
remember for that.
yeah, and if you rushed, you got slammed into these steps, so you toppled like this, and you felt like you fell at an angle, and like the wedge would be in your head.
Wow.
But
Okay.
it wouldn't be like, you're bent, if you get slammed, by the audience, slammed you over like an L shape, it was like,
Right.
boom,
Wow.
like a kickstand or something,
Wow.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great venue. I mean, I think that was probably the one and only time we did play it, maybe.
No, you played Symbol of Salvation there also.
Oh, we did?
It's true.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, we've got a photo that we're going to put up in the montage with a young Metal Dave meeting you for the first time, I believe.
okay.
Yeah.
Now here's some trivia. I don't know if Jason remembers
love
this.
it.
I saw
Dun, dun, dun. Welcome to Trivia on Talk Loud
playing-
Podcast.
I saw Jason with in Portland, Oregon. Do you remember that? I came to your show.
Yes,
Your toys.
I freaked
And
out.
you were touring with. Who were you? You guys were touring with? I can't remember.
I know who I was touring with.
Well, yes, you do. I don't remember who you were touring with, but it was another. But I remember going to that show. The girlfriend I had at the time lived in Portland, so we went to that show, and that was awesome. And that was like, what year was that now?
It was September of '89.
89. Okay. Yeah, because her and I actually broke up like a month after that, I think. So I guess that makes sense.
She wasn't a Toys fan or what?
Didn't like the
No,
toys.
she was into the show, but no, but that was unrelated to the breakup. But yeah, but it was cool going there and seeing you in another town. That was really fun. Who
Yeah,
were you touring with? Give me a hint. Let me see if I can pull it off.
It was Junkyard.
Oh,
I just
you didn't give me a hint.
gave you the answer.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
I might not have got that.
Junkyard, yeah. That was. You got to think about like we were just talking about, early, that Ride the Lightning March of the Saint tour to like the date that we just, 80 September of '89. So February of '85 to September of '89. Dude, that's fast. That's a lot of shit going on in those 3 and 4 years, 3.5 years. That's fucking crazy. And I think about that stuff all the time. How fast it was like, hey, I just saw you a couple of days year ago. Right. It was kind of like that. But we kept in touch all those years and which is another story. That's great. When I met you guys, Dave, guess who introduced me to Mr. Bush?
I don't know.
Mr. Hetfield.
Yeah.
So I'm at the back door at the Austin City Coliseum, and there's a security guy, and he's going, "You got a pass?" I go, "No." I knocked on the door anyway, and the door comes flying open, and it's James with a Nerf football. And you guys it was the gig, the old Austin City Coliseum was like an old airplane hangar, and you guys pulled the buses in there and everything.
Wow.
You guys were playing Nerf football back there.
That's cool.
Door comes slamming open, and James pulled me in, and hey, this is John Bush, and you guys were playing. I just remember it like, whoa, Nerf football.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring up football, because when I met John and the Armored Saint guys at the Cameo Theater on the Symbol of Salvation tour,
story, yeah.
we ended up across the street throwing a football in the parking lot. I guess that's how they were killing time during the afternoon, and so we were throwing passes back and forth in the parking lot.
That's funny. Like now you guys, I don't remember. I kind of vaguely remember what Jason's saying there, but I don't remember. I don't even remember playing the cameo. The Symbol Tour, not one of my highlights in life, quite frankly, much to some people's chagrin. It was a really hard tour because I think we had some high expectations as to what that record was going to do, and we were like. We had some definitely some momentum from it, from doing the Rain of Fire video and then Last Train Home video, and it was played on what you call it? What was the show on
MTV?
Headbangers Ball.
Headbangers Ball, thank you. And we were doing well, but it was also the changing of the guards, and that was when grunge started kicking in, and metal was just it was morphing, to put it politely, and. And the tour, it was us, Wrathchild America, and Last Crack, two cool bands, but we were struggling and to bring people in, and the attendance was mediocre at best. And we were traveling in a van with the crew. So it was the band and the van in a van. So we're talking 10 people. And it was just brutal. It was just way too crowded, way too many people, making these fairly long drives in a van with minimal sleep because it was, you were constantly on the move. And there was some kind of mutinies that were taking place within the crew and against the tour manager at the time, who was kind of new. And so they were being a little bit harsh with him. And then you had some dynamics of the band that were not going so well either. So it was a rough tour, one that I kind of have tried to exercise out of my mind. I mean, some of the shows were great, don't get me wrong, but the tour itself, when I look back on it, I don't have the fondest memories because it was just too rough. And
wow, that's really interesting.
Hard to say.
That's interesting to hear, because I know a lot of people point to that album as being one of your finest moments, and obviously the album versus the tour are two different things. I understand.
And we just went out and we did the record in its entirety, and we did it was about 3 weeks, and it was amazing. So I think by doing that, it kind of exercised some of those demons from that original tour out. For me, it did. Yeah. I can only speak on behalf of myself, but the record, it's awesome. So certainly one of our finest moments, if not our cornerstone album. But that tour it sucked.
So I wanted to ask you, me and Jason went and saw you. You were kind enough to invite us out to San Antonio when you played. You were on tour with Motley Crue, Megadeth, and Anthrax. Yeah. And I think about 4 days into that tour, Anthrax was suddenly off the bill.
Yeah.
What happened there? And we were lucky enough to see you, we were lucky enough to actually see you perform, but 3 or 4 days later, the rest of the world wasn't going to get Anthrax on the bill. Right.
It was only about 3 weeks or so that we did that tour, if that. And I think what happened was it was 2000, roughly, I think it was a year.
Yeah.
And for some reason, a tour like that in your mind today, right? Motley Crue, Megadeth, Anthrax. Well, that's going to be a sure winner. I mean, come on, Motley just played stadiums, for goodness sakes, right? So Anthrax just did, their 40th anniversary tour, which was, one of their biggest in years in America. Megadeth is as strong as it is, of course, still. So I don't know why the timing was just not good for that tour. So the dates were, again, not doing what everybody anticipated as far as the attendance goes. And so the theory was, and I'm slightly speculating because I don't remember exact reasons, but I think really the majority of the reason was that the promoters were asking for some reductions in payment to the bands. And so Motley and Megadeth was willing to do that, and Anthrax was not. And it wasn't for any other reason that if we were to get, at that point, if we would have taken a reduction, we would have ended up being in the red. And so we can't do a tour, we're going to be in the red, because especially when you're playing, pretty big halls, we just can't do that. We're going to lose money, and it would not be wise to do that.
You guys had already been reduced to be that early on the bill. Understood.
Yeah, I mean, we had no qualms about it, and it was a great run. The shows that we did, even if the crowds were a little smaller. But we just couldn't financially take that kind of hit. We would have went from being in the black to in the red. And
yeah, makes sense.
I'm glad that made it to Texas, because it was kind of it was probably the only time I would ever see Motley Crue and Anthrax on a show together.
Right, and we played Universal Amphitheater in LA, and
that's fun.
That held like about 6,000 people, and it was sold out. So like we did legitimate places in certain markets. It just, I guess it wasn't quite what people anticipated.
I understand that. I was going to ask earlier, back to some Saint stuff. I am a hardcore Saint fan, as you know. The writing from the Pritchard stuff, I'll just say, to like the Symbol, that have Pritchard stuff on it? The Symbol record?
Symbol had mostly Dave stuff.
Mostly Dave stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why in particular it had more riffs from Dave than Joey at that time, because March of the Saint had kind of everybody contributing riffs and ideas. And then, Phil left the band. Although he did contribute some songwriting on Delirious, because we had already been rehearsing with him by that point. So he did have some songwriting credits. And then, he left, and then Raising Fear was the 4-piece, but then Dave and Joey kind of split writing. And Joey was always a big part of the writing, but for some reason, Symbol those songs ended up being a little bit more dominated by Dave. I don't think anything in particular more than just that was circumstantial. Yeah. Maybe it was just hot at that point and writing some riffs that just, we were focusing on. But yeah, he was, that's what makes that record even more special, because it was a lot of his ideas on it. And, then he wasn't able to play on it. He played on all the demos, and the demos not recently, a few years back, we did a reissue of Symbol where we contained all the demos with it. So it was the record version and then the demo versions, which were cool because those were all Dave playing on it. And, there were some great versions of those songs. It was only 4-track at that point, 4-track, whatever little tiny board that you recorded 4 tracks on cassette, right?
Yeah, Fostex or
exactly.
Tascam. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's how we did all those demos. And, they held up a little bit considering, but, it was in the rehearsal studio recording those things on that. So, and that's what we ended up lifting to use Dave's actual lead from the demo on the song Tainted Past, which is the one song that he actually appears on Symbol, because
cool.
we lifted that, and that was hard. That was pre-Pro Tools, so they had to like match tempo and fly this lead in and make it work, because I think the tempo was a little bit different from the original demo, and it was a painstaking process that Joey and the engineer at the time, Brian Karlstrom, did, and probably took the majority of the studio day that day just to make that happen. But it was really awesome.
This would be kind of a studio question here, I guess. Did you guys track the basics, bass, drums, guitar, rhythm guitars, maybe vocals, before you tried to fly in that demo solo of Dave's in, or did you clock the tempo on the demo and match the clock to the studio tracks?
I don't remember exactly, but I don't think we recorded the album version of however we felt like that.
Okay.
That should have gone the tempo.
Yeah.
I don't think at that point Gonzo was using click tracks.
Okay.
So I think it was just kind of a natural, however the song felt like it was going to be recorded. And then I think the tempo was different. I can't remember if it was slower or faster, quite frankly. I'd have to listen back.
They either had to squeeze or stretch Dave's
exactly.
solo.
But again, we're talking taking it from a cassette. So I think what they had to do is, for those, and I'm not a savvy person when it comes to anything technical, including.
Welcome to the club. You are in the right place.
All right.
Holy shit. Welcome to the Jurassic talk show.
Yes. Well, hey, we're on Zoom, so this is a step.
Hey, I know, right? But dude, we had to learn how to do this. So.
I did, believe it. I'm still learning. But yeah, I don't like, again, it was the cassette. So they had to fly the cassette onto the, reel to reel and like a separate reel to reel. Because at that point you were tracking, on analog, right? It wasn't digital, it was analog tape. So you had to fly it into separate reel to reel and then match it to the take on the the version of the record from the separate reel. And it was, I don't know how they did it, because I'm sure there was some timing that was off. I don't know how, and that would be an interview that you'll have to do with Joey, because he was and did it. But
they may have had to splice that tape.
Yeah,
they may have had to do all kinds of gnarly work.
Yeah, they did, but it ended up making him on the record, which is cool. And it's been this great lead. It's an amazing lead that is in the slow section of that song. So it's just beautiful.
Wow.
You were famously invited to join Metallica and of course Anthrax. And so number one, I wanted to know, how long did you weigh the decision to not join Metallica? And then number two, were you ever invited by any other bands that we'd be familiar with to join as frontman?
He's gonna play in somebody else somewhere. Well, okay, so this story has been told many times, but it's okay. It's important, I guess, for me to clarify my position in it.
Please.
Just because I was a person. So I can't remember exact time. I think if I had to really sit back and think about it, I could probably figure it out for the most part. But generally, I would say it was in 1982 that when that talk started happening, because Saint was doing club shows in 82, and then by 83 we started playing a little bit bigger shows and more shows. And that it was already kind of off the map or off the offer at that point with Metallica, but we started getting popular. We started, Armored Saint started happening. We were really pretty creative in the way we promoted our band at that time. We passed out thousands of flyers, probably did a lot of littering, unfortunately, because people were like, let's throw it away. So we ended up contributing to litter. But we were really savvy in the way we marketed our band, and we just got out there and promoted. And this is kind of before bands were doing that, but we really, really took it to another level. And we started getting big quick in LA. And that was around the time that Metallica came to me. Now Metallica certainly had, their popularity was much bigger than Saints was, because they were more on a global level, because I think the No Life Till Leather cassette was out there already, just generating tons of buzz. Mm-hmm. But they were, well, this was before Kill 'Em All, so they really didn't. I don't know if they had an official record deal, or they started to get the deal with Megaforce, because that's why Johnny Z would call me. He was the manager at the time in the label, right? So they started. They finally got their first record deal. But what I always tell people is that Metallica was great, and I loved Metallica, and they were cool, and we aspired to be like Metallica, and we saw what they were doing, and we were like, yeah, they're doing the right thing, sending out demos and just generating all this buzz internationally, But I was happy in my band, and I was friends with my band, and I always say that the relationship that was between me, Joey, Gonzo, and Phil, goes back to we were about 8 or 9 years old. Now at that point we were like 18, so it was only like 10 years, right? Now it's over 50, which is insane. Yeah. But like we were friends and we were like doing well. So it didn't, as much as I was flattered, it didn't really make me go, well, I'm going to leave my band. Like, well, I just seemed like, I don't want to leave my band. I like my band and we're doing good. And it just didn't, it wasn't logical. Of course, I always say, as well that, I would have changed. I mean, talk about pressure. I would have changed the whole face of metal if James Hetfield wasn't the lead vocalist and the frontman of Metallica. If it was me, like I might have ruined it, because like Metallica went on to become this, the biggest band in the world, and created this whole vibe by doing so for so many other bands, and
Yes.
helped out everybody's career by doing it. It would have changed everything, because they would have been a 5-piece band. James would have been rhythm guitar. It was not meant to be, for James not to be the singer and the frontman of that band. And I always felt that, like, well, James is great. Like, he's the singer. Like, they shouldn't get me or anyone else. Like, it's, and I always say that the level of vocal talent that James demonstrated through the years was incredible. Because if you listen to Kill 'Em All, and I know everyone loves Kill 'Em All, but his voice was a certain way. And then by the time Master was out, he had grown so much as a singer, like tremendously. And then by the Black Album was a whole nother level. So he really is an amazing singer, and was able to kind of become himself in doing so. And I think maybe at that point, maybe he was a little unsure still and insecure, and no, am I the front guy? Am I, should I be the front man or the singer? But it was the right decision for everyone.
He talks about it, candidly sometimes, I think, about like how, first it was guitar. He didn't feel that good about his guitar playing, which probably would make him, like, him and Lars be like, well, let's find a singer, and then da 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 da. And
Right.
until then, you just kind of use what you got, and they didn't know, just like you didn't know, and no one knew that.
Yeah.
You stay at it and look. Fuck, what happened? It's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
It's
That
like,
is-
well, yeah, and you could relate it. You could relate it to the same thing. It's like the world needed Megadeth, and we didn't know we needed Megadeth. And if Mustaine wouldn't have had that somewhat of a falling out in that camp, there would be no fucking Megadeth. That needed to happen. I've talked.
Right. And I always say that too, because like, as much as Dave, and he for a long time, it seemed like he was pretty bitter about what happened with Metallica. The fact is you were able to go have your own band where you were the front man.
Yeah.
And if he was never going to be the front man in Metallica, he was going to be the lead guitar player. So I completely agree with you. What that did is it created two bands that had a big impact on metal, huge impact, of course, and allowed both those guys to become frontmen. And that was really important, and for them and for metal, So, and if you would have had John Bush and Metallica, would have had that. If you would have had Dave Mustaine staying in Metallica, you wouldn't have had Megadeth. So these are things, not that I'm the most spiritual guy in the world. I am a little bit, but like, that was fate. That was meant to be. And, it just wasn't meant to be for me to be there. And so it's when people ask me, for one, it was so long ago, and the bands were so in their embryonic stage that it was kind of didn't really matter, then. It wasn't like, I always say that, like, it would have been much harder for me not to join Anthrax, because years went by then after that point, and careers had already started, and records were made, and
you're talking 90s when things had changed by then anyway. For Armored Saint and Anthrax,
exactly.
In a lot of ways, guitar players, singers, whatever.
Death, Dave dying.
Exactly.
So like, a lot of life had already been lived. And by the time, when Metallica came to me, and I guess it was late 82, somewhere in that ballpark, we were all just wet behind the ears kids. We didn't know anything. So like, we hadn't got the chance to live yet at that point. Still very,
One of the things I've always admired about Armored Saint is you mentioned it earlier. You guys have been friends since you were, 8 years old or something like that. And that loyalty has stayed. I mean, you guys are, very unusual in that regard that you've maintained that level of loyalty all these years later. And I just think that's really cool because you don't often see a brotherhood like that last through all the ups and downs, and life gets in the way and all this other stuff. And you just put out 3 albums in the last few years with Armored Saint. And I don't think a lot of bands can say that they've maintained that brotherhood all that, for those decades. I wanted to ask you about the transition from Armored Saint to Anthrax, because I find it interesting that Dave Jerden was a common denominator during that transition period. He had just worked with you on Symbol of Salvation as producer, Dave Jerden.
Right.
Known primarily for his work with Jane's Addiction. I think he did Alice in Chains. He was kind of an alternative. Yeah, he was kind of an alternative grunge guy. And then you joined Anthrax, and I believe he produced Sound of White Noise? Is that correct?
Yep.
Right. Okay. So my question is, did he kind of come along with you during that transition, and was there sort of a conscious discussion among the members of Anthrax that said we need to change our sound either to fit the times or to fit John's voice? But there's obviously a very noticeable change in the sound of Anthrax at that time. And so how much of that is Dave Jerden's influence? How much of that is your voice? And how much of it is Anthrax saying we need to change something?
Well, I say it was probably all of the above, and everything contributing to that. And when I joined, of course, it was time to embrace my voice. So to do something to work with my voice would be a logical thing. It would be dumb to change a singer and then say, well, we're not going to embrace this. We're going to still do what we do exactly. You want to be open-minded. It was a new decade. Things were changing. I don't think it wasn't like all of a sudden, let's change the whole sound of the band. Of course not, because they were extremely established and were very important to metal with what they did. But it was an embracing of that, because we loved everything that was happening at that time. There was some amazing bands, and it was time for a new decade, and so we went with it. I think it was just circumstantial that I worked with Dave, and then they were like, well, we want to use Dave Jerden. And I was like, well, I love Dave. I just worked with Dave, so let's do it. It was that simple regarding using Dave. But I think using Dave was based on his body of work at that point, and everyone loved what he did with Alice in Chains and Jane's Addiction, and so it was normal and to want to work with him because he was happening and red hot at the time. So and I think Sound of White Noise is an amazing album. I think it was probably almost a little ahead of its time in some weird way, but the songs really did take on a whole nother kind of movement of Anthrax, and it just sounded like it felt new and like it was really just of the very current, but even maybe, like I said, at some point, it almost as time has gone on, it feels like it could have even come out later than it did. But yeah, it was a great time to work with Dave and to make music at that point, and for me to be able to say, okay, I'm gravitating to these other musicians, and let's see what they can bring out in me as a writer and a singer, and it was awesome. It was a great time.
There was a lot of great material during your time with the band. Some great moments. Random Acts of Violence. Inside Out is one of my favorites of all fucking time. That's so fucking great, the way that song builds.
Yeah, it was great live too. It was always a cool live song.
It's just a chug of a riff, and there's the dynamic. You know what I mean? So fucking cool.
Yeah,
and some commercial value, if I may stretch a little bit on that, because of the anthemic sections.
Yeah,
big anthemic.
Yeah, the thing about my time in Anthrax, what I always tell people is that, it was part of a change that was happening. And that's what kind of threw it into this kind of uncertainty, I think. And I think that was all kind of normal. I think that was happening for a lot of artists. Who knows how it would have been if actually they didn't get me and they kept with Joey in the band. They probably still would have went through a transition into the 90s, because most bands did, who are from the 80s. Some were able to weather it. Some, maybe they sustained it to a certain level of success, or dipped a bit and came back. I don't know too many bands actually, well, other than Metallica, of course, that went further. But it was a hard time, to make that adjustment to a new decade, and let alone changing singers. And, that would have, that made it harder, of course. But I'm super proud of those records. I think that they are all really cool on their own merits, and all a little different from one another. And, I was having a great time during, all those early years in Anthrax, because for me, I had taken a step up of success. I went from playing small clubs with Saint to, half filled halls to much bigger ones and, much bigger attendance. So even though for them, the decline happened in the 90s, in particular, from Stomp On, for me, it was an upcline, an incline. So I was like, this is great. And they're like, so last time we played here, we played the big hall. And this time we played. I'm like, oh, well, last time I played was the Dumpy Club down the street in front of like 50 people. This is awesome.
I played the gutted out. I played the gutted out 7-Eleven last time.
Right. So like, dude, this show is sold out.
Perspective is everything, right?
I remember where I was when I heard the news that you accepted, or that you accepted the offer. I was in Hawaii.
Oh, wow.
And I was in a hotel room, probably having drinks with Mike Graves and Dan Corporal.
Nice. Dude. His life passed, but he was a great.
Yeah. And the Toys were over there playing a couple shows.
That's
and
great.
It would have been probably, I guess, like, see if this sounds right, summer of '92?
I think it was official like in April. So it was like,
oh, okay. All right.
Spring.
All right. So spring of '92. And one of them like had just come from home or something and heard the news on the street, and was like, we were there just hanging in the hotel, having drinks and just talking shit, shooting the shit. And he knew I would want to know. He's like, hey man, have you heard? I'm like, what? And I was like, whoa. I think Dan Corporal was the one that told me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was a hard thing to do because, back then, we held on, by our fingernails to make sure that Saint was going to, get through all the trials and tribulations that we did. And it was really hard for me to leave. As a matter of fact, I said no the first time. And then they came back, luckily for me, and said, hey, man, you should reconsider this. And I was like, yeah, I probably should. And I had a couple of friends of mine who I talked to who were not in the band who were like going, are you an idiot? And I'm like, I guess I am. Yeah. Right. And then so like, and it was only because of that crazy, undying, sick love for Saint and the members and the things that we went through, in particular, just before that with Dave and going through his illness and then him passing away. So I did feel like I was abandoning them, of course. But it's like, again, in retrospect, looking back, that was just the way it was supposed to go. That was his story. Yeah. And that's how life goes. And, luckily we kind of, we picked up and done so much since then. But that's just the way it is.
I hate to interrupt, but it's almost like, do you feel like you got the okay from your Saint bros to do it?
At the time, I don't think everybody was feeling great by it, and that's normal. I think that it created this kind of uncertainty in their individual lives, and so they probably were scared, and I understand, and and maybe didn't feel too great about it. But, and at that, I can't, they should feel however they felt at that time. That's, of course, that's just normal for them to process it however they wanted to. But, the beauty of it is that time has gone on, and we've been able to make all these other records since then and resume as a band. And, I hope that's gratifying this much later time.
I'm sure everybody in your camp, just from us talking to them here on the show, everyone seems excited and happy. Current events with COVID and the whole touring thing being obviously different now, as well as just completely shot down for years, is now in full swing with some new rules maybe for touring bands. You got to think about your meet and greets different, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Just whatever. Yeah. The new way is the new way.
Yeah.
Like it or lump it. That's fine.
Right.
But the fact is that you're getting back on the road on an old school tour with WASP. You are also, I'm dually excited about that, with the WASP Armored Saint connection there, because it's super old school from, we're talking 85.
Yeah. 83, actually.
83. Holy shit. Yeah.
Well, we played a bunch of shows with them in LA in clubs. So.
Right. So the relationship is huge.
Yeah.
Is that you have Michael Schenker on a handful of shows.
That's only in Texas and Tulsa is Michael on those dates.
That sounds like a country song. Only in Texas and Tulsa.
Dude, you got an idea there, Jason.
All right, I'm going to use it. Have you heard my country songs yet? I guess.
I haven't, but I would love to. I love that.
I will email you some tracks.
Outlaw Country is my favorite station right now of any radio station on Sirius satellite radio.
Super cool.
Outlaw Country is amazing. I love that station. They play some amazing artists.
Well, it's hard to write a good country song.
I'm sure it is, to do it uniquely. Yeah. Because so much of it's been done. It's like metal. How can you write an original sounding metal tune at this point?
Right.
Hard.
Right. Or a Christmas song.
Yeah. I haven't tried to do that.
Really hard to write. Well, I have a couple of Christmas songs too.
That's cool.
I wanted to ask you, and not to open a can of worms because I know we're running out of time, but you spoke about your being very proud, and rightfully so, of the albums you did with Anthrax. The one album that I thought was curious was The Greater of Two Evils,
right?
Where you basically came in and the songs from the Belladonna and Neil Turbin era were re-recorded with your vocals.
Right.
What was your how were you asked to do that? That just seems like such a weird request.
Well, I think it was just the theory was that I was singing them live as the singer of the band. So why not just try to get it on record just to see what it would sound like, because I had sang it live. So maybe if people heard me singing live, they would associate it with, this other record now, because they could hear it, in their homes or in their cars. Not just live. So I think that was probably the philosophy of it. It was cool to do it because it was really meant to be like live. Most of it was pretty live in the studio. We even had some people come and watch us perform it. I did redo some vocals for sure, because that's just reality. But most of it was just like one take passes for the most part. So it wasn't like really scrutinized over, which gave it this really raw feel, which was great. If I known realistically that I was going to be out of the band not too long after that, I probably would have said no, because there was no point. But because that was still probably not in everybody's brains, we did it. And then, the way life goes, not too long after I did leave the band. So, but people like it, Brian,
I like it.
Bush fan. Yeah. It's different, it's just different. And, it's just a different version of those tunes. Those songs, it's funny because like I had to, I equate it with like a father who, remarried with 3 kids of his wife's, previous family.
Are you talking about the Brady Bunch?
Well, we could use the Brady Bunch as a great example for sure. Love the Brady Bunch. But like it's that kind of same theory as like you have these adopted kids and now you're going to have to give them your love and raise them and, give it, make them special. And that's kind of how I looked at the songs. They'll never feel like they ever did with Joey because Joey was the OG singer on that and he sang killer and, those are associated with him. But when I was in the band, I had to give them my love. I didn't try to change them. I tried to sing them as best as I could as the original versions. Of course, our voices are different. Yeah. So it was going to sound different, but I tried to give the same inflections and, because I heard people sing other people's songs and then change it. And I didn't like it.
Right.
When I heard it. So I didn't want to do that.
I feel like that too. If I'm going to do a cover, I try to give it the nod.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you're going to give it your own style because it's a voice and it sounds different. But I tried to do that as best I could.
So they're doing only on this tour.
Yeah.
It's fucking awesome. That's just so good. And let that be a nod.
I was stoked. I mean, it's funny. My wife and Joey's wife, Krista, became friends on the Mega Cruise. They just started chatting. I think Tori went up to her and was just like, I want to talk to you because we have something in common here. And so they became friends and they're still friends and they text each other and it's really funny and sweet. But, she like tells, Krista like, yeah, man, that's great. And John's stoked that, that Joey is singing that. And, I mean, I'd be happy if they played more songs, to be quite honest, because, because I love those songs and Joey will sound great on them. So, but I understand why he's reluctant and I don't have any issue with that. Of course, I know the logical reason. He has his own material and maybe he's like, I don't want to sing that. Although it was funny because I guess Maiden is singing, I don't know how many years they've been doing this song, but I guess they have been, where they're doing a song from the Blaze Bayley era.
They do two, actually.
Two of them.
They do two.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, right? So I was like, wow, not even Diano songs, we're talking Blaze Bayley.
Right.
So, and I thought that was great because it just showed security, confidence, like I'm me, I'll make it me. And that's it. And that's kind of, I think with Joey, like, just go ahead, man, embrace it. And if you want, but you'll do it your way. And I think it's great. So I was we played only, it was funny hearing it. And I was rocking out at the Palladium show when I went to go see him and it was cool.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask you real quick, and this is my last question. Jason might have another, but my last question, I wanted to know, is it true you were in a Huey Lewis video?
Oh, yeah. I was in the video of the Heart of Rock and Roll.
How did that come about?
We were label mates at the time. Armored Saint was about ready, or we were maybe in the middle of recording March of the Saint. And Huey Lewis had Sports Out, which was a huge record for them. Yeah. And they were making that video and they had the scene where they needed some heavy metal looking guy. And so our A&R guy, I think at the time, Ron Fair, talked to the people, the powers that be in the Huey camp, or maybe the director, and was like, get this guy in our other band. And he's a metal dude. He wears all this crazy armor, leather shit. And he should be in it. They did tease my hair up a bit and they made me look a little more 80s than, I was already looking 80s, don't get me wrong, but like I had makeup and much more, I didn't really wear makeup. I did on the back. We did wear it on the back of the EP cover. I can't deny, but like, we didn't live and didn't wear makeup or any of that stuff, but they put me in a lot of makeup, but it was for the video. So, and it was really cool. And Huey and the crew were, his band was super nice. And that's a great album. And that was a huge record for them. So it was fun.
Yeah. Some people like Huey Lewis, they know how to write a goddamn song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huey played with Thin Lizzy. He played harmonica with Thin Lizzy.
Hey, he's living legend. I'll wear it on my sleeve. He's living legend.
Some great songs.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Well, I don't really have anything. I could talk to you for 5 hours and that because I miss you and we've had some really, really good times and all those times you pulled me on stage. I love you for that.
Yeah. I pull you on again.
Yeah.
Well, I look a gift horse in the mouth, but it's just been, It's on YouTube, shit like
Yeah,
that.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, our history goes back a long time, and you know, I'm honored by it. And you know, you're a great singer, and you have your own amazing career, and you got your hands in this, and you're a teacher, and that's, you know, it's really, really cool. I really admire everything you've done.
Thank you. We all three of us have been very, very busy since we all crossed paths. The three of us here.
That's great.
You know, I'm proud of you, and I think about it sometimes about. I think you and Tori might have already known each other, but me and Dave were there when y'all were kind of courting each other.
Right. Well,
starting to date or show.
Yeah, it was a Dio tour that we did.
Yeah.
Because you played with us at the Back Room on that show.
Yeah.
So and actually Tori did come out with a friend of hers.
Yeah.
And we actually we're not really officially dating. I think she did sleep in my bunk. We didn't even fool around. But you know, it was like, because we were just friends at that point.
Yeah, it was just cool to see sparks fly.
Well, it's cool.
Yeah.
We established our relationship as friends, and you know, here we are like 2 decades later with 2 teenagers, and I love my wife more every day.
That's awesome.
You know, it's like we have this killer relationship, and yeah, it was fun because we were just buddies, you know, then partying. And we went to, like, I'm in Dallas because I told you, it's funny, I'm close to you guys because I came here for a hockey tournament for my son, and the show that we played at with Dio in Dallas was at the Bronco Bowl, I think. She was there. Her friend Terry's a gay man who's like this crazy flamboyant guy, looks like Rip Taylor, and you know, well, he did then. He's just crazy. But when we played in Dallas, we all went out to a gay bar, and he ended up puking behind the cigarette machine, and I was hanging around with Tori, and we were dancing, and we were secure, whatever. We were at gay bar.
Awesome.
So let's go. And then it was funny because Chuck, who was touring with Lynch Mob at that time, came out with us. And they were in a motorhome. He's an Alice Cooper, has been now for years, right?
Yeah.
And, but he was like, and then they called him back. They're like, we're leaving now. And we're like, he's like, well, I don't want to go. I'm hanging out with the Armored Saint guys. Like, and he had to go in his Winnebago. And we had a real tour bus. I don't know why they didn't, because they were higher in the bill than us. But he was like, well, I don't want to go. And we're like, well, you don't have. You could ride in the bus with us.
Ride with us, yeah.
But I think he still went back. He was really bummed. Like, I got to go back. But like, I have a distinct memory of that show, you know, as well as the Back Room.
Yeah.
Back Room was a weird one because, you know, that show was totally sold out. But for some reason, they told us, oh, you guys are going to have to go on like 10 minutes after doors open. And we're like, what? And like, there's timing issues and blah, blah, blah. So you're going to go in, you have to go on 10 minutes after doors. And we're like, well, that's some bullshit. Like, what do you mean? Like, no one's going to be in here. So
that's not true. That's not true.
No, there was a good crowd there.
No, there was. I mean, they try to get people in quickly, and by the time we finished, when you came on to sing with me, you know, it's packed. But we did go on, like literally. I think it was something like 10, 15 minutes after doors were open. So
that's
you can only get a certain amount of people in. I distinctly remember that because we were pissed, and we're like, oh, what are you going to, but we had to do what we had to do. Our third band on the bill. That's the breaks.
Yeah.
But you were there and we played, and that was a great show.
It was a great night.
There's a movie coming out about the Back Room, because you know the Back Room closed down years ago. Yeah, and it's now Emo's, which is now not the club downtown Austin on 6th Street. It's a venue that holds like almost 2,000 people, maybe 1,300 people on the site of the old Back Room.
Oh, okay.
And the pole that was on the stage.
Right, remember that?
There's a photo we're going to put up in our montage with you at the beginning of this, taken by Metal Dave. Yep. And it's me, the pole, and you.
That's great. That's great.
And they're shooting a movie called Bloody and Bruised: The Untold Story of the Back Room. They've been shooting all these reenactments. Yeah, because that place is legendary, man.
Right.
Legendary.
When year did it open?
You played there 15, 20 times probably.
Right. When did it open? Do you remember?
Oh shit! It was like a biker bar called like the Wooden Nickel or the Silver Dollar or some shit like that in like the late '70s.
Okay.
And then it took over the back room where it was like a game room, pool hall vibe.
Right.
And then they built a wall in the middle, and it became 2 rooms. And
Right, I remember that.
Yeah,
they made it bigger, right? Because it was only one room originally, right?
Yeah, and it had a corner stage. You got 2 walls with a corner, and I think the first time Saint played there, it was a corner stage.
Okay.
Maybe with Megadeth or Saxon.
Saxon, right? Yeah.
Okay, Saxon,
yeah.
Well, it stayed open for 31 years. So I think it started as the back room at some point in the mid 80s, possibly the early 80s.
Early 80s.
And
how many times did you play there, Jason? I mean,
it was my backyard.
He
had a cot in the back room. And
yeah, the toys were the house band. So,
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You remember the gig that here's some reminiscing, and then we'll let you go. But here, do you remember the gig? This would have been in '87, maybe early '88, where I did 2 gigs, like Watchtower. I do
remember that. Right, I
opened for Armored Saint, and then during y'all set, I had to run over to a club on 6th Street and play with Dangerous Toys, and I was wiped out, man. I was fucking wiped out, and someone stole like Gonzo's watch backstage. And a couple of your crew guys came to me. They found out where the toys are playing. They came to me and they asked me about it. It was bizarre. I was like, I don't know, because I'm not there. I'm not policing your back.
I mean, they weren't accusing you or anything?
No, not at all. Not at all. It's just interesting, and I'll never forget that night, the chain of events and the shit that I had to go to, because my bros in Armored Saint, someone went through their shit while they're on stage, and some shit was missing, and they wanted to see if it's like, that's fucked up. I don't know. It's like I didn't put on
my own gig.
Yeah, I didn't put on the show. I was invited to open for my bros. Anyway,
I do remember that. And why did we play the same night as Dangerous Toys? That sounds like a bad decision.
It was a bad decision, but 2 totally different audiences.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
2 different pairs of leather pants.
There you go. You must have. That's great. That's so funny. Well, cool.
Well, it's been great talking to you, John. Thank you for being here with us today.
Yeah,
thank you for having me, guys, and thanks for working with my time here. The game that my son was playing was going long, and I was like, oh no, and I didn't want to leave because I'm actually carpooling with a couple of their parents, and I'm the driver, and so I was like, can you work with me? It was cool. Yeah. My son got a goal today, but then he taunted the player that he scored on, and then he got a penalty right after that. I was like, he hasn't got a penalty all year, and that was his penalty. I'm like, what, dude? Like, I know you're a smart ass because I deal with it daily, but like, what are you doing? Yeah. But I'm happy you got a goal. So
cool. Dave, take us out.
Yeah, John, thank you for joining us. Safe travels home, continued success in everything you do. And we wish you nothing but the best on tour with WASP. I know a lot of people are looking forward to that. And we thank you for joining us today. It's always a pleasure, man.
I'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right, brother. On behalf of my co-host, Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave with John Bush today on the Talk Louder podcast.